video, you will learn how to create and manage permutation reports. Permutation reports are customized reports that allow users to view a subset of permutation fields and/or a subset of a measure's permutations that they are interested in. Custom permutation reports are only visible to the person viewing it. To begin, open the desired measure by clicking on its name in the measure catalog. For today's exercise, I will be choosing the residential clothes dryer. Once the measure opens, select the Permutations tab from the top navigation menu. Custom permutation reports will be located in the Custom Reports section here. One way to create a new custom permutation is to click on the green Create a Report button. In this panel, you will first add a name for your report. I'm just going to title this test number 1 for today. We can skip this next field called Scope and come back to it at the end. From here, you can select the permutation fields or columns that you would like to view. Note that the columns are in the order that they appear in the permutations table. For definitions of these columns, please see our statewide measure development and QA/QC guidelines document. So I'm just going to choose a couple of display fields here and then keep going down. So if you're viewing the report for this measure only, you can also select measure-specific columns in addition to the standard permutation data specification fields that we just selected. If you want to see the calculation input and assumption values that went into the energy savings, it would be good to select these additional fields. You also have the ability to add filters to the selected permutations or rows that you would like to include in your report. So let's say we want to specify this sector and maybe the specific voltage types. And let's say this is all that we wanted to filter for in our report, and then we can press save. But before we do that, let's go back up to the scope. So there are two different types of scopes. So you can either save these filters and permutations for this specific measure, or you can make this applicable to all of the measures that are currently active in ETRM. So this option of making this applicable to all measures on ETRM is useful if maybe your program only works in specific territories and you're only interested in looking at the climate zones that are associated with that specific territory, for example, climate zones 1 through 5. So that would be helpful for that type of work. For today's exercise, I'm just going to save it specifically for this measure only. So once I press save and I go back to permutation index, it's going to populate right here. You can use the page navigation to go to the results, and you can even download the permutation as well. If you want to go back and make any changes, you can press configure and it'll give you the option to select or deselect rows. And you can even change these row filters here at the bottom. For example, if you don't care about having specific voltages, you can press save. And then as you can see, it populated additional permutations. Now let's go back to the permutation index. So for the sake of today's exercise, I already created a global permutation report. So as you can see, the scope of this one is that it's applicable to all measures. So let's go back to our measure catalog and let's go to a random measure. If I go to the permutation section and the custom reports section, I can see that my global report is here because I selected the scope to be for all measures. The one thing that I would like to point out for global reports is that you might apply a filter to a measure specific column and it's not going to show up on every measure. So for example, let's look at this measure FS17. If I go to permutations and to create a report and I go down to the filters, there is a column here to filter for conveyor width. So let me apply these options and then I'm just going to select some random data parameters and call this test 2 and make this applicable to all measures. And then if I press save, it'll generate the report here and it'll show the filters that I've applied. However, if I go to another measure that doesn't have the conveyor width field, it's just simply not going to show up because ETRM will ignore the inapplicable columns. So as you can see, there is no filter for that and there's a message that shows up. One other thing that I would like to show you guys is how to create a custom permutation report through a different method. So the first way that I showed everyone is through creating a report, but you can also do it through viewing the permutations table. So if I click view all permutations, I have the ability to filter, and then I can apply these filters. Let me select a couple of offering IDs, press apply. Let me do another one. I can do just the gas fuel type. Okay, I overextended here. But if I press save as a custom report, it'll bring the same pop-up and give me the ability to create a report name, change the scope, and then I can still add the global parameters, and then I can also add parameters that are specific to that measure. And then if I press save and go back to permutation index, it'll show this report right here. The last thing that I would want to show you is how to manage your existing custom reports. So if I go right here and press manage your custom reports, I have the ability to see all of the custom permutation reports that I've created. Again, I can edit it from here, so this is another way to do this. And I also have the ability to delete the custom report if it's not necessary to be used anymore. And once you're done with this, then you can exit out and you can see all of the custom reports that you have left. And that concludes today's training on how to create a custom permutations report. Thanks for watching.